This is Dr. Andrew Jones. In this edition of Veterinary Secrets, I'm going to be discussing protein in dog food. How much? How little? Should you be feeding high protein or not? So I wanted to give you guys just a sense of how much snow we have here. So in my little community of Nelson, I think you might be able to see there's actually a van behind me. So much snow, it's covered in snow. We are a mountain town and we do get snow, but I've never ever seen this much. So here's some of the road. It's just like snowmageddon. It's crazy.
It's well-behaved Pippi who's going to star in today's video.
Oh, Pippi! Protein in dog food. So I've got Pippi, my assistant here. Like, how much protein should Pippi, she's a middle-aged, a spayed female dog, how much protein should she be on? Should she be on high protein? Should your own dog be on high protein? Is protein good for your dogs? Is this just sort of the natural health claims? Or, should it be what, some of the food companies and some veterinarians are saying that too much protein can harm your dog's organs. Well, first of all, I'm going to address all those questions in this video with the help of Pippi, assuming she stays in the video, and then give you a better insight into terms of how much protein you should be feeding your dog, the real truth about protein in dog food and what you should be looking for in terms of reading a dog food label. So what is protein? Well, proteins are the key building blocks in dog nutrition. To think about the importance of protein, think about any cell that's in our own dog's body, in our dog's body, it needs protein just to function. So it's not just sort of in the muscle mass. You think of protein, you think of muscles. Think of other things, such as immunoglobulins, parts of the whole immune system. That is protein. Think of a protein called albumin, which is produced by the liver. It's the main thing. It acts as sort of this carrier, carries things throughout the blood system, helps maintain blood pressure. So every really function within your dog's body, within our body, it requires protein. Believe it or not, someone like Pippi, she descended from wolves. So if we look historically back in terms of where have our dogs come from, yes, we started out with these wild canines, so these are wolves. Certain number, we had humans that were forming settlements. These animals were somewhat sort of domesticated in terms of, these guys are kind of friendly, I can benefit from them. And that became sort of our future dogs. So if you go back thousands of years, you could look back historically, 20,000 years, and that's sort of where the first dog came from. So believe it or not, yes, Pippi has descended from wolves. She doesn't seem very wolf-like. She's very, very friendly. Good girl, Pippi. But historical, if we look at where she's come from, they can get a real good sense in terms of what she probably should be eating, and more importantly, the importance of protein in her diet. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And when we look at the amino acids in dogs, they require 22 amino acids. And actually, that's sort of the basic building blocks, what makes up protein. But within those amino acids, dogs can synthesize 10 of them. They can make 10 of those different amino acids within their own body systems. But there's 12 of them that they need to consume via animal protein for them just to survive. Not even just to function, but just to survive. So some of those amino acids include arginine, methionine, lysine, tryptophan. A little bit about protein quality. Not all proteins are created equal. The big point is the makeup of the amino acids of that protein, then how much is available in terms of how much of that animal protein can your dog then break down, ingest, metabolize, and then use for all its various body systems. So the gold standard are eggs. I'll show you that right here. And the number given is 100. That's kind of considered, the white of that egg, or the albumin, is actually considered the gold standard in terms of most bioavailable protein. Next on the list is what's in here is fish. So it's about 90%. Beef drops down to approximately 80%. Believe it or not, then there's things like fish meal, bone meal, that drops down to approximately biologically available amount of about 50%. And then there's even things such as this, feathers, for instance. Yeah, there's protein in here, but really, how much of that is biologically available? Is actually usable for your dog? Virtually zero. So in terms of protein requirements, part of it depends on the life stage of your dog, and when we look at sort of what your dog is actually doing. So when we think of something like a puppy, they require somewhere in the approximation of between 30 to 35% protein. An animal that's an athlete, such as these racing sled dogs, somewhere in the range of 30 to 35%. The other big time when a dog has a high protein demand will be our pregnant dogs, pregnant and lactating. They're producing all this milk, they're trying to feed all these puppies. They need somewhere in the range of 30 to 35% protein. Then when we get down to dogs, sort of the average kind of dog, sort of mid-active dog, we're going to drop that protein requirement down to closer to 20 to 25%. And someone like Pippi, who sort of spends a good chunk of her day just hanging out, she requires somewhere between the range of 20 to 25%. Can you feed too much protein? I think the answer to that is yes and no. So first of all, it really depends on the life stage of your dog, for instance, and the real needs of your dog. Does Pippi here need to be on a 40% protein diet? No, she doesn't, based on what she's doing. But if Pippi was lactating, she's trying to feed puppies, then she's at des. The second thing would happen with all that excess protein, for the most part then, if the body doesn't require it, it's going to metabolize that, it's going to be excreted out in the urine. Some of that protein is then going to be additionally stored for energy, maybe stored as fat. In other cases though, if we've got a dog, for instance, an older dog that has something such as kidney disease or kidney failure, then we don't want to be feeding them too much animal protein. We want to feed them sort of their required amounts of protein, perhaps a slightly lower amount. So should Pippi be eating this dog food here? Let's look at the dog food label. So let me get my funky, the glasses are pink because they're actually my white glasses. Don't let her know, I can't seem to find my own. So, what do you think? I don't know if pink's my color or not. So let's look at the label here. So a couple things. First of all, I'd like to see an animal-based protein in one of the top 5 ingredients. Preferably you're looking at a protein that is either the whole protein source, so like chicken, for instance, as opposed to chicken meal. Chicken meal is considered a decent quality protein, but it's not near the same thing as chicken. Some of the real poor quality ones include things like beef meal, fish meal, general poor quality, all the byproducts, any of these animal byproducts, for instance. Those are just sort of leftover parts of the animal. We know that those are poor quality, as are the meals too. And something to really avoid, I encourage you to avoid, is soybean meal. They'll claim it's got protein, which it does. How much is bioavailable is a good question. And the second big concern is, you can go refer to my video I did a couple weeks ago, just about the whole issues around soy being an endocrine disruptor in terms of just mimicking estrogen within the body, and it's really having some pretty negative effects on our animals. So we really want to have you avoiding soy. So you're looking at this so I'm looking at this label, for instance, here, and I'm going to read you the other big thing in terms of reading a label in general. And when you go through it, you're looking at all those products, look where the fat source is listed when we're looking at the label, and sort of go backwards from that. So anything from the fat and before that are the primary ingredients what's in that dog food. So we look at the one here, it's listing chicken, cornmeal, ground whole grain, chicken byproduct meal, which is a poor quality protein, dried beet pulp, there's no real need for that, natural flavor, chicken fat. So everything before that is the key parts of this food. And it's got whole chicken. The big issue here is being whole chicken, and it's listed as number 1. Great, chicken is the first ingredient. So you're sort of thinking it's mostly chicken, but the problem, it's a whole chicken which includes all that moisture, and that's how they'll measure the amount. It's before it's been dried out, before it's converted into dry kibble. So it sounds like you've got all this chicken with all that moisture. So it's volume by weight. So it weighs more than, say, for instance, the cornmeal that's originally added to make up this food. But when you dry everything out, 70% of that chicken is moisture. So when you dry it out, really you're looking at, it means that you've lost most of the volume, most of the weight is gone when it's dried. So now you're down to looking at the cornmeal, the ground whole grain are going to actually be the primary ingredients. Chicken's going to be sort of third or fourth or fifth on the list. So should Pippi be eating that food? It's an okay food. I mean, when I look at the percent protein on it, it says it's 25% protein. It's not obviously all the chicken that's making that as protein, but it's sort of and that's about the percent protein that we want to have for our dogs. And it's got a real animal protein within it. It's got chicken as a protein, so it's decent in terms of protein quality, in terms of food quality. There's definitely far better foods in terms of in terms of protein levels, and in terms of some of the other ingredients in there, in terms of the carbohydrates. Preferably, you're going to avoid things like cornmeal. If you can avoid things like the grain. I'd rather see a carbohydrate, if there's going to be one in that food, something like sweet potato or potato, even rice. Just to recap, because I do find like anytime I do a video on dog food and I read about it, it's often very confusing. So first of all, yes, your dog needs protein. Secondly, we want to make sure they have the right percent of protein. So an average dog like Pippi, 25%. Somewhere between 20 to 25%. You want to make sure there's that percent of animal protein within your dog's diet. Third, you want to look at the protein quality. So you need to make sure that it's actually a good protein, not sort of byproduct meal. Not things like feathers, not fish meal, not bone meal, not meat meal. We want to see a real protein, such as chicken, such as fish, such as beef. The last thing, you guys, I want to mention is I'm having a webinar on natural dog health and nutrition. That's happening next Tuesday. That's February 14th. It's my Valentine's Day dog webinar. I'm moving around because Pippi is sniffing me looking for food. I encourage you guys to sign up for that, and you can do so by going to thedogsupplement.com/webinar.